The movie ended at 11:47 p.m. That was the time stamped in red digits above the emergency exit, glowing faintly through the drifting dust of Theater 3. The numbers buzzed as if irritated by being looked at too closely. Mara Kellogg noticed the time because the sound had finally stopped. No dialogue. No music. No laughter. Just the low mechanical whine of the projector winding down behind her, and the sticky sound of soda cups shifting as people stood up, stretching, filing toward the aisle. The credits were still rolling, white names sliding upward into blackness, but the audience had already decided the story was over. Mara stayed seated. She always did. She liked watching the credits all the way through, liked the way the theater slowly emptied until the room felt abandoned, like a ship everyone else had fled. It gave her a few extra minutes where the world felt suspended, no school, no mother asking where she'd been, no late shift at the grocery store tomorrow. Just the screen, the darkness, and her breath. By the time the credits ended, she was alone. The screen went black. The lights didn't come up. Mara frowned. Normally, the lights rose in stages, first a dim glow along the aisle, then the overheads flickering awake with their tired yellow hue. Tonight, nothing happened. The darkness remained thick and heavy, pressing in from the edges of the room. "Hello?" she called, softly at first. Her voice sounded wrong in the empty space, thinner than she expected, like it had to travel too far to find anything to land on. She cleared her throat. "Mark?" Mark was supposed to be locking up. He was the assistant manager, mid-20s, always smelled like cheap cologne and popcorn grease. He'd teased her earlier for staying through the credits. "Don't let the demons get you," he'd joked. Mara shifted in her seat. The projector clicked once, sharply, like a bone snapping, then went silent. She stood. Her shoes stuck slightly to the floor as she stepped into the aisle, the sound loud in the quiet theater. The emergency lights along the floor glowed dim red, just enough to trace the stairs down toward the exit. Mara hesitated. The theater felt wrong. Not scary. Not yet. Just emptier than it should have been. As if the darkness wasn't merely the absence of light, but something pooled there deliberately, waiting. She shook the thought away and started down the steps. Halfway to the exit, she realized something else was missing. The hum. Movie theaters always had a hum, air circulation, distant projectors, lights, refrigeration from the concession stand bleeding through the walls. It was constant, comforting. Now there was only silence. Not peaceful silence. Listening silence. Mara reached the door and pushed. It didn't budge. She tried again, harder. The metal handle was cold, biting against her palm. Locked. Her heart kicked once, sharp. "That's not funny," she said, louder now, though she didn't know who she was speaking to. She stepped back, scanning the darkness behind her. Theater 3 stretched upward in long rows of empty seats, black shapes barely visible. The screen loomed at the front, blank and enormous. For a moment, just a moment, she thought she saw movement on it. A flicker. She blinked. Nothing. Mara turned and hurried up the aisle, shoes squeaking faintly, and pushed through the heavy curtains into the hallway. The lobby was dark. Not closed for the night dark, but power is gone dark. The neon posters were dead. The arcade machines along the wall were black mirrors. The smell of popcorn hung stale in the air, sweet and burned. "Mark?" she called again. No answer. The concession stand loomed ahead of her, a glass fortress of silence. The popcorn warmer light was off. The soda machines were dead. Even the candy racks looked drained of color. Her phone buzzed in her pocket, startling her badly enough that she gasped. She pulled it out, hands trembling. No service. Battery, 72%. Time, 11:53 p.m. She frowned. That didn't make sense. The theater always had service, even late. She turned in a slow circle. That was when she saw the doors. The main glass doors at the front of the lobby were shut tight, metal security grate pulled down behind them. Beyond the glass, the parking lot was dark and wet, rain streaking down in thin lines. The streetlights outside were off. All of them. Mara's chest tightened. She walked to the doors and rattled them. Locked. Okay, she muttered. Okay. Fine. Probably a breaker. Probably Mark forgot to check Theater 3. Probably. Her thoughts cut off as she noticed something strange. The posters. The movie posters lining the walls were wrong. She stepped closer to the nearest one. It was supposed to be for the film she just watched, a forgettable horror sequel with cheap scares and loud music. She'd seen the poster 100 times. But now, the image had changed. The smiling faces were gone. The characters' eyes were black pits, stretched too wide. Their mouths hung open, not screaming, but waiting. The title text looked smeared, letters sagging as if melting. Mara stumbled back. Her foot bumped something on the floor. She looked down. A radio. The handheld walkie-talkie the employees used during shifts lay on its side near the concession stand, its red LED blinking weakly. She snatched it up. "Mark," she said into it, trying to keep her voice steady. "This isn't funny. I'm locked in." Static crackled. Then, breathing. Slow. Wet. Too close to the microphone. Mara froze. "Hello?" she whispered. The breathing stopped. For a second, she thought that was it. Then a voice slid through the static. "Not Mark's. The showing isn't over." The radio screamed. Mara dropped it, clapping her hands over her ears as the sound tore through the lobby, feedback and distortion and something underneath it that laughed. The lights flickered. Once. Twice. Then the screen above the concession stand, one of the small digital boards, flickered to life. Grainy footage filled it. Black and white. A fixed-angle shot of Theater 3. Of Mara. Standing alone in the aisle, staring at the exit door. Her blood ran cold. She looked up at the camera in the corner of the lobby ceiling. It wasn't red. It was glowing white. The screen changed. Another camera. The hallway. Another. The bathroom. Another. The projection room. Each feed lingered just long enough for her to notice something else. Something standing in the dark behind the camera. Watching. The speakers crackled. A voice filled the lobby, deep and layered, like many mouths speaking through one throat. Doors lock after closing. Lights go out. The audience leaves. The screens went black. The projector roared to life somewhere in the building. Mara screamed. And the theater began its last showing. The projector's roar wasn't steady. It stuttered, starting, stopping, choking, as if whatever ran it didn't quite understand how machines were supposed to work. The sound echoed through the lobby walls, vibrating through the soles of Mara's shoes and into her bones. She ran. Not toward the doors, she already knew they were useless, but toward the hallway that led to the bathrooms and employee-only areas. Her breath came in sharp, shallow bursts, her mind scrambling for explanations that kept dissolving before they could settle. A prank. A power surge. A drunk homeless guy got in. None of it fit. The hallway lights flickered weakly as she pushed through the door. The air felt colder here, damp, like the building was sweating. The carpet muffled her footsteps, but not completely. Each step sounded too loud, too final. Behind her, the lobby speakers clicked. Then footsteps followed. Not running. Walking. Unhurried. Mara didn't look back. She bolted into the women's restroom and slammed the door, fumbling for the lock. It clicked into place with a thin, pathetic sound that did nothing to reassure her. She staggered back, heart pounding so hard she thought she might black out. The restroom lights were on, but dimmer than usual, buzzing overhead with an insect-like whine. The mirrors above the sinks reflected her face in fractured strips, her skin pale, eyes wide and wet. She pressed her palms to the counter and forced herself to breathe. In. Out. Slow. The footsteps outside stopped. Silence returned, thick and deliberate. "Go away," she whispered, though she didn't know who she was speaking to. The mirrors rippled. Mara jerked back as the glass distorted, her reflection stretching vertically, her mouth pulling into a shape she wasn't making. For a split second, the reflection smiled. Then everything snapped back to normal. She let out a broken sob. Her phone vibrated again. She snatched it up, hope flaring painfully in her chest. Still no service. But a notification appeared anyway. Playing, camera feed 03. The screen switched without her touching it. Black and white footage filled her phone, grainy, distorted, fisheye. The women's restroom. Her restroom. Mara looked at the screen. Then slowly turned around. In the corner of the ceiling above the door, a camera she had never noticed before blinked on, its lens rotating with a soft mechanical whir. On her phone screen, something stood behind her. Tall. Wrong. Its shape flickered, like a film skipping frames, sometimes thin as a shadow, sometimes swollen and hunched, its limbs bending at angles that made her stomach churn. Its face was a smear of white where eyes and mouth should have been, as if someone had taken a human face and erased it. It leaned closer in the feed. Mara screamed and spun. Nothing was there. She backed into the sinks, nearly slipping, eyes darting wildly. The camera feed glitched, static crawling over the image until the screen went black. Her phone dropped to the floor. The bathroom lights went out. Total darkness swallowed her. She crouched instinctively, hands over her head, breathing fast. The darkness wasn't empty. It pressed against her skin, cold and damp, whispering at the edges of her hearing. Stay. Sit. Watch. The lights snapped back on. Mara scrambled to her feet and ran. She burst out of the restroom and into the hallway, nearly colliding with the wall as she took the turn toward the employee corridor. The footsteps returned immediately, closer now, multiplied, overlapping. Not one set. Many. They moved like an audience shuffling to their seats. She slammed through the employee's only door and plunged into the narrow corridor beyond. The walls here were bare concrete, stained with years of leaks and grime. The smell was stronger, mold, grease, something metallic. The projection room was ahead. She knew it was a bad idea. But it was the only place with another exit, a maintenance stairwell that led to the roof. Mara ran. The projector's noise grew louder with every step, morphing into something almost vocal, like a strained moan. The temperature climbed sharply, heat radiating from the door at the end of the hall. She grabbed the handle. It burned her palm. She yanked it open anyway. The projection room was alive. Both projectors were running, reels spinning wildly, film whipping through the machines too fast, too loud. Strips of film lay tangled across the floor like shed skin, fluttering as if caught in an unseen breeze. On the far wall, the projection window glowed. Not with Theater 3's screen. With something else. Mara approached slowly, dread pooling in her stomach. Through the glass, she saw a theater. But not her theater. The seats were older, rotted, sagging. The walls were cracked and stained with long, dark streaks. The screen flickered with a home movie, children laughing, running between rows, waving at the camera. Then the camera tilted. The children stopped smiling. Behind them, the seats filled. Not with people. With shapes. The film jumped. The children were gone. The seats were full. All of them facing forward. Waiting. A voice rose behind her. Close. We remember every audience. Mara spun. The door slammed shut. The lights cut out. The projectors screamed. The film on the floor began to move. It slid toward her in slow, deliberate coils, wrapping around her ankles, tugging, pulling her down. The film was warm. Wet. It tightened like fingers. She fell hard, hitting her shoulder, pain exploding through her arm. She clawed at the film, ripping it, tearing it, but more kept coming, feeding from the machines. Her screams were swallowed by the roar. The projection window flared bright white. The room filled with images, faces layered over each other, mouths opening and closing out of sync, eyes staring directly at her. You stayed after the credits, the voices said together. You wanted to see how it ended. The film yanked her toward the window. Mara dug her fingers into the concrete floor, nails splitting, blood smearing. She kicked, sobbing, screaming, her throat raw. Please, she cried. I want to go home. The voices paused. For the first time, something like curiosity crept into them. Home is closed. The film released her all at once. She slammed into the wall, gasping. The lights snapped on. The projectors powered down. The film fell limp. Silence rushed back in, ringing in her ears. Mara lay there, shaking, every muscle locked in terror. Slowly, painfully, she pushed herself up. The door to the projection room was open again. Beyond it, the hallway was dark, but empty. She staggered out, clutching her bleeding hands, tears streaking her face. Behind her, the projection window went dark. Then one last image flickered across it. A title card. White letters on black. Intermission. Mara screamed again, and ran. Mara didn't stop running until her lungs felt like they were tearing themselves apart. She burst out of the employee corridor and into the lobby again, nearly slipping on the tiled floor. The concession stand loomed ahead, its glass reflecting her in fractured pieces, bloody hands, wild eyes, hair plastered to her face with sweat. The lobby was darker than before. Not powerless dark. Stage dark. Soft amber lights glowed along the baseboards, low and theatrical, like the house lights before a show resumed. Somewhere above her, speakers hummed to life. A bell rang. Once. Clear. Polite. The kind used to signal intermission was over. Mara staggered to a stop. No, she whispered. No, no, no. The doors to Theater 1 creaked open. Then Theater 2. Then 3. All at once. A breath of cold air rolled out of them, carrying the scent of dust, mildew, and something faintly sweet, old perfume, old people, old memories. Footsteps followed. Seats creaked. Whispers rose. Mara backed away until she hit the concession counter, her spine pressing into cold glass. She scanned the lobby wildly, looking for anything, a weapon, a hiding place, a miracle. Her phone lay shattered somewhere behind her. The radio was gone. She was alone. Except she wasn't. Figures began to emerge from the theater entrances. They looked human at first. That was the worst part. Men and women of different ages shuffled into the lobby, their movements slow and jerky, like puppets pulled by tangled strings. Their clothes were outdated, faded denim, moth-eaten coats, dresses from decades past. Some were soaked through, water dripping onto the floor. Others were burned, fabric fused to skin. Their faces. Some had faces. Others had only suggestions of them, smooth planes where features should have been, or eyes pressed too deep into skulls, or mouths stretched impossibly wide. They didn't look at Mara. They looked at the screens. Above the concession stand, the digital menu boards flickered on. Static crawled across them before resolving into text. Intermission, please remain seated. The crowd obeyed. They turned as one and began to sit. Not in the theaters. In the lobby. Rows formed with impossible precision, bodies lowering onto nothing at all, knees bending, backs straightening as if invisible seats supported them. Within seconds, the open space was filled with a silent audience, all facing forward. Facing her. Mara slid sideways along the counter, heart hammering, until she reached the narrow gap behind it. She ducked down, crouching amid boxes of syrup and popcorn bags, trying to make herself small. Her breath sounded deafening. She clamped a hand over her mouth. A child's voice spoke. "Are you part of the movie?" Mara flinched and looked up. A little girl stood on the other side of the counter, no older than 8. She wore a raincoat that hung heavy with water, her dark hair plastered to her cheeks. Her eyes were wrong, too bright, reflecting light that wasn't there. Mara's voice cracked. She swallowed. "No." The girl tilted her head. "You're bleeding." Mara glanced at her hands. The blood looked black in the dim light. The girl smiled. "So was my mom." Before Mara could respond, the girl's jaw unhinged. It split down the middle, opening far wider than humanly possible, revealing rows of small, blunt teeth that chattered softly, eagerly. Mara screamed and bolted sideways, knocking over a stack of cups as she fled toward the hallway again. The audience didn't move. They didn't have to. The lights dimmed further. The speakers crackled. A familiar voice filled the space, warm, practiced, cheerful. "Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back." Mara skidded to a stop. The voice belonged to Mark. "We hope you enjoyed the first half of tonight's presentation. Please silence your cell phones, remain seated, and remember." The voice glitched, dropping several octaves, layering over itself. "There are no exits during the show." The doors slammed shut behind her. Every one of them. Mara turned in a slow circle, panic clawing up her throat. "Mark," she called hoarsely. "If you're here, please." The screen above the lobby flared to life. A live feed. Mark stood center frame, illuminated by harsh white light. He looked pale, sweating, his eyes darting frantically. "Mara," he said, his voice trembling. "Oh, thank God. Listen to me, this place, something's wrong." A shadow moved behind him. Long. Thin. Its fingers rested on his shoulders. Mark froze. "Mara," he whispered. "Don't stay, don't watch." The shadow leaned forward. Its mouth pressed against his ear. It spoke. Not aloud. But Mara heard it anyway. "Every showing needs a sacrifice." Mark screamed. The feed cut to static. The audience applauded. Hands clapped slowly, wetly, out of sync. Some hands were missing fingers. Some clapped bone against bone. The sound filled the lobby, rising to a roar. Mara dropped to her knees, sobbing, her vision blurring. "Please," she begged. "I'll leave. I won't tell anyone. I won't come back. I swear." The applause faded. The lights shifted. A spotlight snapped on, blinding her. She shielded her eyes, squinting through the glare. She was alone again. The lobby was empty. No audience. No girl. Just her, kneeling in a circle of light. The speakers hummed softly. "Every theater has rules," the voice said gently. "Stay quiet. Don't look behind you. Leave when the credits roll." The spotlight tightened. Mara slowly rose to her feet, dread pooling low and heavy in her gut. "What happens," she whispered, "if you break the rules?" The silence stretched. "Then you become part of the program." Behind her, a projector whirred. Mara turned. The lobby wall had transformed into a screen. Her face filled it. Live. She watched herself turn, watched herself scream. The screen fractured, splitting into dozens of panels, her from different angles, different times, different expressions. On one panel, she was older, eyes hollow, skin gray. On another, she was younger, crying in the dark. On another, she wasn't moving at all. Mara stumbled back, shaking her head violently. "No. No, no, this isn't real." The screen flickered. Changed. Now it showed the lobby doors. Unlocked. Rain-soaked parking lot beyond. Freedom. The speakers whispered. Final chance. One last choice. Mara stared at the doors. Her chest heaved. Her instincts screamed at her to run, to take it, to escape while she could. But something felt wrong. Too easy. She took a step forward. The screen glitched. For just a frame, barely a blink, she saw herself sprinting through the doors. And then, the doors slamming shut behind her. The screen cut to black. Mara backed away slowly. "I won't," she whispered. "I won't play." The lights went out. Total darkness. A hand closed around her ankle. She screamed as she was dragged backward, nails scraping uselessly against tile. The darkness swallowed her whole, cold and wet and alive, voices whispering over her, through her. "Watch. Stay. Remember." The projector roared. The screen blazed white. And somewhere, deep inside the theater's walls, a new reel began to spin. Mara came back to herself with the taste of dust and copper in her mouth. She was lying on carpet. Not the lobby tile. Not the hallway. Thick, threadbare carpet that smelled like age and spilled soda baked into decades of neglect. She opened her eyes. The ceiling above her was low and curved, ribbed with acoustic panels stained yellow-brown. Dim aisle lights glowed red along the floor, stretching away on either side like dying embers. She was in a theater. A different one. The seats were wrong, older than the rest of the building, wooden armrests cracked and splintered, cushions collapsed inward like rotting lungs. Numbers were stenciled on the ends of rows in faded paint, A, B, C, continuing far too deep into darkness for the size of the building she knew. Mara pushed herself upright, her body screaming in protest. Her wrists burned. She looked down. Film was wrapped around them. Not tight enough to cut off circulation, but deliberate. Restraining. The translucent strip shimmered faintly, images crawling along it like ants, faces, hands, screaming mouths, all sliding past in endless succession. She gagged and tore at it. The film tightened. A voice spoke from the darkness behind the screen. Please remain seated during the feature. Mara froze. The screen flickered to life. At first, it showed static, thick, rolling snow that hissed softly through unseen speakers. Then the static cleared. A title card appeared. White letters. Slightly blurred. The last showing. A presentation of the Hollow House Theater. The letters jittered, then burned away. The image changed. A movie theater lobby. Bright. Clean. Alive. Mara's breath caught. She recognized it. The same theater, but years ago. The posters were different. The arcade machines were newer. People laughed, chatted, brushed past each other with popcorn tubs and sodas. The footage was warm, nostalgic. Safe. A younger girl appeared on screen. Mara's stomach dropped. It was her. 13 years old. Hair longer. Softer face. Standing beside her mother near the concession stand, arguing gently about what candy to buy. Mara shook her head violently. No. Stop. This isn't. The film didn't listen. Her mother laughed on screen, brushing hair from Mara's face. The sound of it hit her like a physical blow. You always stay for the credits, her mother said in the memory. One of these days, it'll get you in trouble. Mara sobbed. The image jumped. Another memory. Her first job application. Her first closing shift. Mark showing her how to sweep Theater 3, joking about ghosts, about the old fire that happened decades ago, before the renovations, before the lawsuits. Before the theater learned how to hide its hunger. The voice returned, closer now, layered with dozens of others. Every audience leaves something behind. The images darkened. The lobby emptied. The doors locked. The lights went out. The camera didn't stop rolling. Figures emerged from the walls. Mara screamed as she recognized them, the same shapes she'd seen earlier, thinner now, less defined, like they were still learning how to be solid. They surrounded the version of her on screen. You don't have to show this, she cried. You already know, just let me go. The film paused. The theater was silent except for her ragged breathing. Then the voice asked, almost gently. Why did you stay? Mara swallowed hard. I like the quiet, she whispered. I like knowing how things end. The film resumed. The version of her on screen turned. Looked directly into the camera. Directly at her. Her eyes were empty. So do we. The screen flared. Heat washed over Mara as the film around her wrists burned, not hot enough to blister, but enough to make her gasp and writhe. The images on the strip accelerated, screaming faces blurring into a single, endless howl. The seats around her began to fill. Not suddenly. Gradually. One by one, shapes settled into them, the air growing thick with their presence. The smell of damp clothes, old smoke, rot, and something electrical crept through the room. They didn't look at her. They looked at the screen. A bell rang. The feature began. The screen showed the exterior of the theater at night. Rain falling. Streetlights dead. A girl pounding on the glass doors. Mara watched herself from outside now, watched her panic, her confusion, her hope curdle into terror. She screamed warnings at the screen, her voice hoarse and useless. Don't go back inside. Don't answer. Don't. The audience shifted. A ripple of pleasure passed through them. The version of her on screen made every mistake again. Went to the bathroom. The projection room. The lobby. The voice narrated softly over it all. Fear sharpens the image. Pain deepens the sound. Regret keeps the reel from tearing. Mara thrashed, sobbing, trying to tear herself free. The film dug into her skin now, soaking up her blood, darkening as it fed. The screen changed. Now it showed after. Morning light through the lobby windows. Police cars outside. Her mother screaming, held back by officers. A body being wheeled out under a sheet. Small. Too still. Mara choked on a sob so violent she nearly blacked out. No, she whispered. Please. Please don't end it like that. The voice leaned close, surrounding her, pressing into her ears, her skull, her thoughts. Endings are mandatory. The screen faded to black. White text appeared. Test audience response, excellent. The audience stood. They applauded. This time, the sound was deafening. Hands clapped in perfect unison, a thunderous rhythm that shook the seats, the walls, her bones. The film around her wrists tightened again, lifting her slightly off the seat. She screamed until her voice broke. The applause stopped. The lights came up. Dim, yellow. Tired. Mara slumped, gasping. The restraints loosened. A final message appeared on the screen. Thank you for staying. The screen went dark. The audience dissolved. The seats emptied. The theater returned to silence. Mara collapsed forward, sobbing, barely conscious. Somewhere far above her, a projector clicked off. Another clicked on. A new reel began to spin. Mara woke to the sound of rain. At first, she thought it was part of the movie again, the hollow echo of it, piped through speakers, engineered to soothe before the next terror. She lay still, eyes closed, counting breaths, waiting for something horrible to announce itself. Nothing did. The rain sounded real. She opened her eyes. Morning light filtered weakly through the high emergency exit doors at the back of the theater. Dust motes drifted lazily in the air, illuminated gold. The seats around her were empty. Normal. Just seats. Torn upholstery. Old gum stains. No audience. No film. No voices. Mara pushed herself upright, every muscle screaming in protest. Her wrists were free. She stared at them. Thin red lines circled her skin, shallow but unmistakable, like healed burns. When she touched them, a jolt of nausea rolled through her, accompanied by the faintest echo of applause. She gagged and pulled her hands back. It's over, she told herself. It has to be. She stood on shaking legs and made her way down the aisle. Each step felt tentative, like the floor might give way beneath her. When she reached the exit door, she hesitated, hand hovering over the push bar, heart hammering. Slowly, she pressed. The door opened. Cool, wet air rushed in, carrying the sharp smell of rain and asphalt. The parking lot lay beyond, slick and gray under an overcast sky. Police tape fluttered near the entrance. A cruiser idled nearby, lights off. Mara laughed, a broken, hysterical sound, and stumbled outside. The moment her foot crossed the threshold, the sound hit her. Sirens. Shouts. Her name. Mara. She turned. Her mother was running toward her from across the lot, face streaked with tears, eyes red and wild. An officer followed close behind, calling for her to slow down. Mara, oh my God, her mother grabbed her, crushing her in a hug so tight it hurt. We thought. Mara clung to her, sobbing, the warmth of her body anchoring her to something solid and real. I'm here, Mara whispered. I'm here. But even as she said it, something felt off. The theater loomed behind them, silent and ordinary. Too ordinary. The marquee above the entrance flickered weakly, letters half-lit. Now showing. Nothing beneath it. No title. The officer cleared his throat gently. You're safe now, Mara. You've been through a shock. We're going to get you checked out. Mara nodded numbly. As they led her toward the cruiser, she glanced back at the building one last time. For just a second, she thought she saw movement behind the glass doors. A figure standing in the lobby. Watching. The reflection shifted. It was her. Not as she was now, soaked, shaking, alive, but older, eyes hollow, skin gray, mouth stretched into a faint, knowing smile. The reflection raised a hand. Mara stumbled, gasping. Her mother steadied her. Honey. What is it? Nothing, Mara said quickly, tearing her gaze away. Nothing. I want to go home. They put her in the back seat of the cruiser. The door shut with a solid, final click. As the car pulled away, the theater slipped from view. Mara closed her eyes. And the applause began. Soft at first. Distant. Her breath hitched. She pressed her palms over her ears, but it didn't help. The sound wasn't coming from outside. It was inside her. The doctors said she was lucky. Dehydrated. Shocked. Minor injuries. No explanation for the burns on her wrists, but they faded into pale scars within weeks. The police found no sign of anyone else in the building. No evidence of Mark. No damaged equipment. No extra cameras. The theater reopened a month later under new management. Mara never went back. She tried to return to her life, school, friends, work somewhere far from dark rooms and crowds. People whispered. They stared. They asked questions she couldn't answer. At night, she dreamed in flickers. Static. Faces. Seats filling. She stopped sleeping through the night. Then, slowly, other things began to change. She noticed details she hadn't before, the way shadows lingered too long, the way reflections sometimes moved a fraction of a second late. Screens made her nauseous. Movies felt wrong, like they were watching her instead of the other way around. Once, in class, a documentary played on the projector. The lights dimmed. The hum started. Mara vomited and ran from the room, shaking uncontrollably. The applause followed her down the hallway. Always soft. Always patient. Months passed. Then one evening, her mother found her standing in the living room, staring at the blank television. Mara, she asked gently. Sweetheart. Mara didn't respond. The screen flickered on by itself. White text on black. Intermission. Mara smiled. It was small. Relieved. Her mother screamed. They institutionalized her after that. Doctors said dissociation. Trauma-induced psychosis. Hallucinations. They put her in a room with no screens. No mirrors. No windows. For a while, that helped. The applause faded. The voices quieted. Mara almost believed she had escaped. Then one night, as she lay staring at the ceiling, the lights dimmed. Just a little. A familiar hum filled the room. Her heart swelled with a terrible, aching warmth. From the darkness, a voice she knew better than her own whispered. "Places, please. The audience is waiting." Mara sat up. The walls stretched. The ceiling rose. Rows formed around her. She felt the film wrap gently around her wrists, not painful now. Familiar. Comforting. The screen lit up. On it, a teenage girl sat alone in a movie theater, watching the credits roll long after everyone else had left. Mara leaned back in her seat. She stayed. She always stayed. Most people don't stay for the credits. The staff notices that. The theater notices that. The Hollow House always has. Years later, the building looks different. New carpet. New signage. Digital projectors humming softly behind reinforced glass. The old fire was written off as a rumor, the disappearances as coincidence. A new name hangs over the entrance now, something clean and forgettable. But the bones are the same. On a Friday night in October, a teenage girl sits alone in Theater 3. She's tall for her age. Dark hair pulled into a messy ponytail. Her phone glows briefly in her hands as the final credits roll, then goes dark as the battery dies. She doesn't get up when the lights fail to rise. She doesn't notice the hum fade away. She stays. Above her, in the projection room, a reel begins to turn. Not film. Memory. Behind the glass, something stirs, something that wears familiarity the way a costume wears skin. It knows this moment. It has lived this moment thousands of times. In the empty lobby, a digital board flickers to life. Now showing. A title appears. The last showing. Runtime. Unspecified. In the dark of Theater 3, the girl tilts her head as the silence deepens. She frowns. "Hello?" she calls. Her voice echoes beautifully. Perfect acoustics. Perfect fear. Somewhere deep in the walls, something smiles. And in a seat that does not exist. In a row that should not be there. A young woman with pale scars around her wrists sits very still. She does not blink. She does not breathe. She watches. The applause begins. Most people don't stay for the credits. The staff notices that. The theater notices that. The Hollow House always has. Years later, the building looks different. New carpet. New signage. Digital projectors humming softly behind reinforced glass. The old fire was written off as a rumor, the disappearances as coincidence. A new name hangs over the entrance now, something clean and forgettable. But the bones are the same. On a Friday night in October, a teenage girl sits alone in Theater 3. She's tall for her age. Dark hair pulled into a messy ponytail. Her phone glows briefly in her hands as the final credits roll, then goes dark as the battery dies. She doesn't get up when the lights fail to rise. She doesn't notice the hum fade away. She stays. Above her, in the projection room, a reel begins to turn. Not film. Memory. Behind the glass, something stirs, something that wears familiarity the way a costume wears skin. It knows this moment. It has lived this moment thousands of times. In the empty lobby, a digital board flickers to life. Now showing. A title appears. The last showing. Runtime. Unspecified. In the dark of Theater 3, the girl tilts her head as the silence deepens. She frowns. Hello, she calls. Her voice echoes beautifully. Perfect acoustics. Perfect fear. Somewhere deep in the walls, something smiles. And in a seat that does not exist. In a row that should not be there. A young woman with pale scars around her wrists sits very still. She does not blink. She does not breathe. She watches. The applause begins.